Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, at least 13 countries across Europe have suspended their use of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Medical experts insist it's safe, but what are the implications of the growing backlash? I'll be discussing this and more with Dr. Toyin Lawal, the Director of Nursing and Telehealth Clinics for Mobi Health International. She'll be joining me from Los Angeles, California. And despite struggling to curtail the COVID-19 infection rate, the latest economic data from Brazil's central bank shows that Latin America's largest economy is now back to the size it was 5 years ago. Paolo Levy, a macroeconomics researcher at the Institute of Applied Economic Research, will be joining me from Rio de Janeiro to discuss the story behind the headlines. Then later, I'll be reporting on the biggest company news stories of the week. Before then, let's start the programme with news from here in the UK, where Brexit woes are once again back in the spotlight. The EU says it has begun legal action against the UK over breaches related to the Northern Ireland Protocol. Brussels is outraged over Downing Street's recent move to postpone British exporters to Northern Ireland having to provide export certificates. Firms exporting across the Irish Sea from the British mainland were initially given a 3-month grace period to avoid the extra bureaucracy, but some supermarkets in Northern Ireland were hit by shortages. The UK unilaterally decided to extend this grace period, which covers areas such as animal products and parcel deliveries, until October.
We think it's lawful, and indeed we think it's right in view of the impact on the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement and the need to have consent from both communities. I think the most important thing about the protocol is that it should guarantee the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement, which we all believe in, and everybody and Ireland and the UK and Northern Ireland has worked so hard to achieve. And there's got to be a balance and symmetry in that. And what we want to ensure is that the protocol upholds the wishes of all communities, of both communities, and has the consent of both. So there's got to be an east-west consent to what's going on, as well as north-south. So that's what we're doing. We're just trying to make sure that that's built into it.
Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by our business correspondent, Simon Pusey. Simon, the Northern Ireland Protocol back at the top of Boris Johnson's in tray again.
Yeah, very much so. I know the words sort of Northern Ireland and peace agreement always seems to, well, obviously for many reasons, scares a lot of people based on decades of violence there and anything that could be breaking the Northern Ireland peace agreement. And this is one of those things, or at least according to the EU it is. And you may remember Boris saying during the sort of Brexit fuss in terms of will we have Brexit or not, that there would be no customs border with Northern Ireland. Well, there ended up being this customs border with Northern Ireland, albeit with a period of grace, which is a few months after the agreement actually went through. After Brexit started to happen, there'd be a period of grace where tariffs wouldn't be put on, so there wouldn't be this whole sort of big, hard Brexit kind of no sort of transition period. Well, the government has quietly decided that they're going to extend this period of grace without telling the EU. And about a week ago, the EU wrote to the UK government saying, what's going on here? What do you intend to do about this? Because we might have to take you to court. And the UK government said they would respond in due course. They haven't responded, and the European Commission is now saying that, yeah, this might end up in the European Court of Justice, which is not a great place to be for the UK government. It is interesting, though, about what could happen there, because obviously we're not in Europe anymore, so it's not like the EU can say we're going to kick you out of Europe, because we're already out of Europe. So how realistically they can deal with this, it's a lot of people are asking that question. Would it be a fine? Would it be? But I guess the fact that we're in this position isn't something that the government or Downing Street wants to shout about. It's the second time in so many months that the UK government have been accused of breaking international law. So they're saying that this is going to be a short-term thing, and this is just to deal with a couple of logistical difficulties with Brexit, I guess. So, but there's a couple of tensions with Europe at the moment. I know you're talking about the AstraZeneca vaccine, and also, there's a couple of things that are happening there. Europe seems to be pretty embarrassed about the way it's handled some of the rollout of their jabs. Obviously, the rate at which people are getting immunised there is lower than in the UK, and I think maybe there's a sort of feeling that this the fact that the UK sometimes points to the fact that we've left Europe and therefore we can do things our own way and we're doing it slightly better. The rights and the wrongs of that are unimportant. It's more the look and it's more the PR of that. And one of the things is this Oxford AstraZeneca jab, which is obviously has been sort of trialled in the UK, but it's a lot of the factories are abroad. And it's a very awkward and confusing thing that the European Union seems to be doing, because the World Health Organization is saying that there's nothing to worry about. There's no link between blood clots, supposed blood clots, and the jab. But a whole host of European countries, Germany, France, the Netherlands, have all suspended the use of it. And this is at a time when their coronavirus statistics, deaths and cases are going up. And so a lot of people are very confused. A lot of experts are saying, why are you doing this when there's no known link? For example, 10 million AstraZeneca jabs in the UK and just four, no zeros, just 4 blood clots and no deaths resulted from that. And experts saying that's lower than the usual number of blood clots you get for 10 million people in the population. So a few things going on with the EU and the UK, as you might expect. I think breaking international law twice in as many months isn't a good look for the UK government, but so often with the government, they seem to be more kind of concerned with public opinion at home and the fact they're taking on these bullies who are trying to push the UK around, and that does seem to play quite well to those people who did vote Brexit, that we're sort of holding our own and doing what's best for Britain, and those kind of things that we've maybe heard across the Atlantic over the last couple of years. Restrictions also easing slightly. We're in the UK at least. Portugal, we're going to be allowed to travel to Portugal. That's off the red list, so that'll be nice for some people who are considering a summer holiday, maybe somewhere hot. In Scotland, a whole host of things are opening up again from the 5th of April, including hairdressers. And in Wales from Saturday, people will be able to mix from 2 households. 2 people from 2 households will be able to meet outside to socialise. So things are gradually sort of easing and seem to be getting a little bit better, just in time, hopefully, for some hot weather.
Thank you for the update, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here's some other news from across the globe. Xi Jinping has said that China is on schedule to attain its target to peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. At the 9th meeting of the Central Finance and Economics Committee in Beijing, the Chinese president pointed out that achieving a carbon peak and carbon neutrality is good for society. He added that China should incorporate the target into better ecological protection. The confirmation comes after the country's National People's Congress ended its week-long annual meeting, which unusually did not set a target for annual GDP growth. Economists at Goldman Sachs have raised their GDP growth expectations for the US economy to 8% for 2021. Such a rise would mark a complete comeback from the financial downturn caused by the coronavirus pandemic, surpassing the 4.1% decrease in the economy last year. With 8% growth, the US gross domestic product would reach $22.6 trillion. The last time US GDP expanded by this amount was in 1951. The Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine remains in the spotlight this week as dozens of European countries have suspended its use. The move came after 7 reported cases in Germany of blood clots, including deep vein thrombosis, in people who had recently received the jab, 3 of which were fatal. In Italy, 8 people have died and 4 more have suffered serious adverse events, according to local reports. Medical experts from the World Health Organization insist that the vaccine is safe. Millions of doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine are currently being rolled out across Africa under the COVAX programme. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by Dr. Toyin Lawal, the Director of Nursing and Telehealth Clinics for Moby Health International. She joins me from Los Angeles, California. Dr. Toyin Lawal, thank you so much for joining me on Channel's Business Global from sunny California. Let's start with the controversy. AstraZeneca vaccine has been widely in the news over the past couple of days for all the wrong reasons. Several European countries have stopped using the vaccine, even though here where I am in the UK, our Health Secretary Matt Hancock insists that it's safe. Lots of global medical experts also insist that it's safe. And we do know that millions of the vaccine have been pumped out across Africa as part of your COVAX scheme. What are your thoughts on what's been happening?
Thank you so much, Ms. Juliana. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Channel TV. My name is Dr. Toyin Lawal, Director, Mobi Health International. Thank you so much. Regarding the vaccine, I will tell you that, even though a lot of people have been talking about the serious side effects, but what is happening is we have to look into the science. We have to look at the evidence. We have to base all our responses on data and evidence. I do agree with Mr. John Nkensang, the CDC, African CDC director, that has said the AstraZeneca vaccine is safe. I do agree with him that it's very safe and is also very efficient. And we have to look and connect with data. And this is my agreement. I completely agree with it. The vaccine rollout in Africa is just the biggest rollout in history. And I do agree with it that it is safe and it is very efficient.
What are your opinions, Dr. Toyin, on the rollout? As you said, it is the biggest continental immunisation in history. Millions have been given out. We have seen a couple of ministers, I suppose, having the jab in your arm is almost as popular as a selfie in Nigeria at the moment. So many people are proud and grateful that they've had the opportunity, even ahead of some people in Western nations. It is going pretty smoothly. Would you testify to that?
I am really, really very happy, and I appreciate the government's effort trying to secure the vaccine for our people, and that the vaccine has landed in Africa. We really need to appreciate the effort of our government. Many African, leaders, they deserve the accolade. They deserve the commendation because they work so hard. They put in so much effort during the pandemic. Even early in pandemic last year, all effort was put to help African continent. And our leaders have gained so much traction. They demonstrate great leadership to get this vaccine across to Africa. I appreciate all their leadership and all that they are doing for our people in our community.
Got to talk a little bit more about the controversy, because one of the fears about the complications, potential complications with the AstraZeneca vaccine is it gives power to the anti-vaxxers. There are so many here in the UK. I'm sure there's certainly many where you are in LA, in California, and in Africa. We know that sometimes there is a bit of a taboo, isn't there, about taking Western medicines. We know that even with COVAX, there are a small handful of countries on the continent that are not taking part in the drive. Do you understand where this fear comes from? Do you think we need to do more to encourage people that taking the vaccine is safe?
Yeah, thank you so much. I do agree that we need to do more in educating our people and increase sensitization so that our people understand, the effectiveness of the vaccine and that it's safe. The fear of many people comes because of trust. This is actually a drive force of trust. We need to increase trust of our people on this vaccine. When you look at it in the beginning, many people have a lot of myths. We need to bust the myths. Some of the myth is like it will change your DNA, it will change your RNA. No, this vaccine is safe. I will use myself as an example. I've got the vaccine. It's really good for us, to get this vaccine to eradicate this pandemic as much as we can.
Where do you think a lot of this this fear is stemming from? Is it the fact that it did take quite a short period of time to create such a groundbreaking scientific vaccination?
A lot of people are afraid because it is really fast. But the thing, the bottom line is this. People, the scientists and researchers have been working on mRNA even before COVID-19. And COVID-19 just, is a pandemic that helps us to push forward the power of technology and the power of science. And because of this, a lot of people think that it's not safe for them, it's too rapid, it's too quick. But, for us, any vaccine at all to help us eradicate this pandemic is good for us to take. We have seen what Dr. Fauci mentioned many times. We have a lot of scientific backing. CDC also have given us their awards. And we've seen millions of people who have taken the vaccine already. So we need to help our people who are still hesitant or people that are still kind of like, resistant to take the vaccine. Education and education and education will help us in our community to bust the myth and to make sure that people knows that this vaccine is safe to take.
Dr. Toyin Lawal, thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global. Thank you. In a moment, I'll be speaking with Paolo Levy about growth in Latin America's largest economy. But before then, here's some company news for you. Roblox, the online video game which became increasingly popular with young children during the lockdown, is now valued at a staggering $45 billion. Following its New York Stock Exchange debut last week, shares soared 60%. Over the past 12 months, daily user numbers have rocketed by 85%. Monthly users are up by 75%, and the number of hours spent playing have more than doubled to 30 billion. At the heart of the business model is its digital currency, Robux, which Roblox sells to players to spend on games and items. Players bought and spent $1.9 billion of its digital currency last year, enough to make it one of the top grossing apps on Apple and Google devices. Facebook has signed a 3-year partnership with News Corp Australia, which will allow content from the media empire to be featured on the social media platform news section. The landmark deal comes just weeks after Australia passed a controversial law which would require tech platforms to pay for news content for the first time. Media outlets from across the globe have lost billions in advertising revenue to internet giants like Facebook and Google. News Corp, owned by tycoon Rupert Murdoch, has not disclosed the value of the contract. British Airways has announced plans to launch a digital global vaccine passport in time for the return of international travel on the 17th of May. Under the scheme, people who have had both jabs will be able to register their status on the company's new smartphone app produced by Verifly to prove that they are safe to fly. The step is part of a move to entice people back to flying when current restrictions come to an end. BA is not the first carrier to take the step. Several other airlines, including Ryanair, Qatar Airways and Rwanda Air, are also trialling similar measures. Brazil's economic activity rose sharply in January, a central bank index showed on Monday, indicating that Latin America's largest economy has not only recovered all its pandemic-related decline, but is now back to the size it was over 5 years ago. Official data also shows the economy created more than 250,000 formal jobs at the start of the year, the strongest growth in January since comparable records began in 1992. In contrast to this, the country's president, Jair Bolsonaro, is facing mounting pressure and public anger over his government's handling of the coronavirus crisis. Brazil has reported 11.5 million COVID-19 cases and more than 279,000 deaths to date. The government has just appointed its 4th health minister since the start of the pandemic, and its health service is on the brink of collapse. To discuss this, I'm now being joined by Paolo Levy, a macroeconomics researcher at the Institute of Applied Economic Research. He joins me from Rio de Janeiro. Paolo Levy, thanks for joining me on Channels Business Global. Some pretty decent economic data has come out of the central bank showing that growth could potentially be at pre-pandemic levels. We also then, on Tuesday, got a report suggesting that the amount of people that are entering the job market is also at accelerated growth. What do you think is driving this activity?
Well, I think there are two factors that determine this performance. The first one is that industrial production has been pulling growth up due to a change in the consumer patterns of demand that switched from services consumption into the consumption of goods. This is something that we have seen elsewhere in the world with industrial production leading growth and even offsetting the negative effects of services production, which has been hardly hit by the pandemics and the need for people to be in social isolation. So this is one factor. Industrial production is responding to that. The other thing is because of government programs transferring income to families affected by the pandemics, particularly those of low income levels, you were able to maintain demand. And even if activity has been affected, especially in the services sector. So you also have people maintaining somehow their consumption and changing it into the consumption of goods, buying electronics, buying things for their houses, and other things like that, somehow replacing the consumption of services. They go less to restaurants or they don't travel any longer. So this is all combining to produce a good performance in the economy. And the industrial sector is also a sector that hires workers on a more formal way, workers obeying the labor legislation and so on. So that's why you're seeing, because of the increase in manufacturing labor demand, you're seeing this good performance in the labor market.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning the fiscal stimulus. I wanted to ask you about what potentially the next set of fiscal stimulus will look like, because, you know, you can't talk about economic activity in 2021 and not talk about the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19. We've seen new stimulus measures just signed into Congress by Joe Biden. We also saw early this month the British government extending some of their economic stimulus for people who have been struggling. What are we going to be expecting from Brazil? Because we know you are witnessing a second wave of COVID spread, aren't you?
Yes, the fiscal space for implementing additional programs of income transfer to families are very small. Brazil has already entered into the pandemic, started with very high deficit levels, fiscal deficit levels, and also a very high debt to GDP ratio. So there isn't much fiscal space. A lot has been done last year in terms of, as I mentioned before, transferring income to the most vulnerable parts of society, those people more involved in informal activities. But currently, the scope for additional programs is much smaller. In fact, the government has approved a program last week in the Congress that is much smaller than what you had last year, about 1/4 of what you had last year. And the idea is that this time the program will be much more focused on the people that really need it.
Brazil is under the spotlight at the moment, especially the president. We know there's an election next year. There are lots of issues when it comes to the handling of the pandemic. I know you're just going to be appointing your 4th health minister in about a year. There's lots of discussions about the environment. I know race issues remains a major issues, as well as corruption. How is, Brazilians, how are they coping at the moment? And what is the mood on the ground right now?
Well, the elections next year certainly have an effect currently because politicians, political groups are, let's say, searching for alliances and probing the ground as regards as what candidates we might have and so on. So the fact that we're going to have elections next year will have an effect on the political framework that we face today. There's debate in Brazil, as there are in other countries, regarding the way the government has been facing the pandemics, regarding the health ministry actions in supporting state and local governments in their efforts to fight back pandemics, to provide medical assistance to those that need. And maybe the main criticism currently has to do with the fact that Brazil might have waited a bit longer than would be necessary to acquire vaccines, so that we are coming to the market at a moment that there is strong demand pressure upon producers of vaccines, international laboratories that produce the vaccines. But gradually, the government has been increasing the number of vaccines contracted, while we are in the middle of a more serious situation regarding the number of cases, regarding the number of deaths, number of people needing treatment in hospitals. But as the vaccine program advances, I believe that the situation will gradually normalize.
Thank you so much, Paolo Levy, macroeconomics researcher at the IPEA. Thank you so much for joining me on Channels Business Global.
Thank you for the opportunity. Goodbye.
Sadly, that's all we have time for today, but do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.